Decolonization refers to the process by which colonies gain independence from their colonial rulers. This movement, which gained momentum post World War II, marks a significant shift in global political dynamics. The withdrawal of European powers from Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean fundamentally alters international relations and reshapes national identities. The process of decolonization is multifaceted, involving political, social, and economic transformations, and continues to this day. One of the earliest and most notable examples of decolonization is India's independence from British rule in 1947. The Indian independence movement, led by figures like Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, used both non-violent resistance and political negotiation to achieve sovereignty. The end of British colonial rule in India not only inspired other colonies to seek independence, but also set a precedent for peaceful protest and negotiation as a means to achieve political goals. In Africa, the decolonization process varies greatly across the continent. Countries like Ghana, under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, achieved independence relatively peacefully in 1957. Conversely, Algeria's fight for independence from France, which culminated in 1962, was marked by a brutal war that left deep scars on both Algerian and French societies. The Algerian War of Independence highlighted the intense violence that often accompanied the decolonization process, revealing the complexities and difficulties in breaking free from colonial rule. Decolonization brings numerous benefits to newly independent nations. Politically, it allows for the establishment of self-governance and the creation of institutions that reflect indigenous values and traditions. Economically, it opens opportunities for nations to control their resources and develop their economies without external interference. Culturally, decolonization fosters a resurgence of native languages, customs, and identities that had been suppressed under colonial rule. For instance, the African continent sees a revival of traditional art, music, and literature that helps to reclaim and celebrate its rich cultural heritage. However, decolonization also faces significant criticisms and challenges. The abrupt withdrawal of colonial powers often leaves newly independent states with weak political structures and little experience in self-governance. This sometimes leads to political instability, corruption, and authoritarianism. For example, the Democratic Republic of Congo faced severe turmoil after gaining independence from Belgium in 1960, resulting in a prolonged period of conflict and dictatorship under leaders like Mobutu Sese Seko. In contemporary times, decolonization extends beyond political independence to include efforts to decolonize knowledge, education, and cultural institutions. Movements such as the Rhodes Must Fall campaign, which began in South Africa and spread to other parts of the world, advocate for the removal of colonial symbols and the inclusion of indigenous perspectives in educational curricula. This ongoing process seeks to address and rectify the lingering effects of colonialism in various aspects of society. To learn more about colonialism, watch this video next.
My name is Panashe Aubrey. I am doing international relations and diplomacy. My topic is focused on decolonization of agriculture and food security in Africa. Decolonization is the process of undoing colonial rule and also restoring political, economic, and cultural independence to formerly colonized nations or peoples. It can also be in different forms, including political decolonization, the transfer of political power from a colonial authority or state to an independent government or institution, often through negotiations and also legal reforms and also armed resistance. And we also can furthermore explain how decolonization can be also in the economic decolonization setup. For example, reducing dependence on the former colonial powers by restructuring economies and also nationalizing resources, and also to developing self-sufficient industries and also agricultural productions in the economic setup. Also, to add on, we can also talk about cultural decolonization, reviving and promoting indigenous languages, traditions, and also cultural norms that are imposed on the religious languages. And we can also talk about psychological decolonization, which is challenging to the challenge to the mindset, and also is such as internalized racism or Eurocentrism. We can also further explain about fostering a sense of self-determination and identity among formerly colonized people, such as in Africa. Furthermore, we can talk about decolonizing African agriculture, involving shift from historically imposed. Edmore can also look at the Western-centric farming models within the agricultural setup, which were imposed by the Europeans as a way to control the African systems. Since formerly colonized Africans have not yet regained their taste buds in terms of how the agriculture produced are not that of an African nation and are affected with the GMO, the genetically modified systems. Just to add on, Africa, however, persistence of food shortages throughout the region and other associated circumstances indicate that Africa's palates need to be quickly weaned in order for there to have a wean from colonial appetites, and the continent's native food systems need to be focused on, and innovation needs to be there. Communities and nations formed their own food using sustainable and land use methods for centuries in Africa. So throughout much of Africa, especially the south of the sub-Sahara, food supply and demand fueled self-sufficient. That's including the need for cultivation and processing of our own African native food system, agricultural production, such as millet, sorghum, rapoko, and also we need to do the cassava, the yam. Therefore, we will be re-galvanizing our own African food systems. Just to add on, we can also process our own beer of Africa, our wine, and our own beverages rather than relying on the Western food support. Agricultural skill was praised as progressive in many African nations, and therefore we need to recognize that Africa, we can do it. The Africa we want, we can achieve it without the need to be supported by the Eurocentrism or the European or the Asian. We can do it on our own. Civilization was there before the colonization, meaning that the Africa had their own food systems. We had our wealthy food produced within our own agricultural setups. The nature of the land in Africa is to access and is the primary source of human sustenance. Land in Africa was treated as a part of nature and not as a resource to be exploited at will. The result of this has resulted to an unstable system where humans and the means of production has been unmutual and also not beneficial and unnatural, replenishing the ecosystem with. So at large portions of Africa's human capital requirements of food production was depleted as a result of transatlantic slave trade, which disrupted the continent's prosperous agricultural systems or self-sufficiency and agricultural growth trajectory. Some communities have suffered greatly to this slave trade because the youngsters, those who were able to work in farms, they were taken away from their motherland. For centuries, all trade in African human commodities came to an end with the start of a need for Africans who were in communities that they were affected.
Welcome to the Valley of Dreams, where your dreams do come true. Africa University. They only come true if you choose the right degree, an undergraduate in international relations and diplomacy. This degree is taught by the best lecturers that Zimbabwe has to offer, the likes of Dr. Rusero, Dr. Pinduka, and Dr. Dinesa. They're not the only ones though. More. We have absolutely everything to give you. Human resources, marketing, journalism, and my personal favorite, diplomatic endeavors. The degree of international relations does not limit you. You can be absolutely anything you would want to be. And to you, my future ambassador, as the Vice Chancellor of Africa University once said in Matriculation 2024, leadership begins on your knees. Don't forget to pray now.
Furthermore, now I'm going to the segment of FAO. So the FAO defines that food security is a lack of regular access to sufficient and safe and nutritious food for natural growth and also for development. Further, also for an active and healthy life. So the 14th goal of the African Agenda 2063 is with recognition to healthy and well-nourished citizens. Currently, Africa is facing food insecurity and challenges because of increasingly population and urbanization, and also is limited to agri-food and productivity. The World Vision is reported in approximately of 257 million people across the continent, representing that 20% of the African population are facing food or hunger threats. They are chronically undernourished 237 million people situated in the sub-Saharan African region. To counter the food security challenge, there's a need for a framework to be recognized as a comprehensive for African agriculture development program, and also we need to garner for the CADEP for calls for African agricultural research institutions, farmers associations, and agricultural African governments in the private sector. For collectively growth and development, heightened investment, and stimulating agricultural production and growth. On the other hand, the Maputo Declaration urged that African Union member states to allocate 10% of the national budgets towards agricultural activities as investments. The 10% of investment of the GDP is encouraged so to accomplish approximately 60% agriculture economic growth over the next few decades. African countries are also encouraged to adopt modern agricultural technologies in order to enhance agricultural productivity across the continent. Notably, adopting modern agriculture technologies has the potential to significantly boost African agriculture and make it a more productive continent and competitive, sustainable, and inclusive. These modern agricultural technologies can include sensors, artificial intelligence, and digital technologies, which can further devices and automated machineries and information technology. This characteristically utilizing the technologies such as robotics, temperature systems, and also moisture sensors, aerial images, is to know how our crops, and also to use drones
and GPS technology. Adopting these innovation tactics and devices makes precision in agricultural development, and robotic systems enables agri-food enterprises and to realize better profitability and efficiency, and also safety, and also environmental friendliness. Aspirations of the African Agenda 2063 have to accelerate agricultural growth and transformation. The AAGT, formulated by African heads of states and government, aiming at eradicating hunger in Africa by 2025. But howsoever, this is just an imaginary vision, but it can be done with how effectiveness and how we collaborate as Africans to achieve this certain goal. For example, the most dominant challenge in hindering achievement increasingly is the agricultural growth that can boost food systems and self-sufficiency for African countries. Just to add on, the lack of investments towards the R&D, which is the research and development, results into deficient agricultural infrastructure across the continent. There's a need to boost our own monetary systems, and inefficient implementation of policies or frameworks can also cause inadequate food distribution mechanisms are also needed to improve our food sustainability and accessibility within Africans' increasingly population growth. As to add on, the limited access to food has also caused a fragmentation within agricultural systems. Also, with the post-apartheid regime of South Africa having been there, and also with the current system, we have seen that South Africa has faced a lot of problems within that. Most of the land that is acquired is owned by the white people, while the blacks continue to live in squatter camps in areas which they cannot survive peacefully.
Bana Congo, bana Zimbabwe, bana Angola, Tanzania, Rwanda, boya ebele to vivre ambiance ya Congo na musique a bien, na damaza bien, masanga bien, basikra bien, boya ebele to kuta na bisonyo so na sky view.
Hey man, it's your boy Abraham right here, inviting you all for the welcome party for all the freshmen. This is for you at Africa University.
Are you all excited for this 26th of October? The Congolese community is welcoming you for the welcome party that's going to be happening. And the ticket is only going for $10. It's going to cover the food, the transportation, and the drinks.
Makadi, uyai ku Congolese welcome party.
La communauté congolaise organise une manifestation Welcome Party qui aura lieu en date du 26 octobre de 16h à 21h. Les billets sont déjà disponibles.
Hello, pessoal. Comunidade congolesa apresenta Welcome Party dia 26 de outubro.
Os bilhetes estão à venda a partir do valor de $10 com direito a transporte, comida e bebida. Esperamos por vocês lá.
Conclusively, I have to add on to the traditional farming methods, techniques such as permaculture, also agroforestry, and crop rotation need to be used in Africa in agriculture systems. Reviving indigenous farming methods needs on also the seed banking systems instead of depending on the GMOs can boost our own organic food and farming to reduce reliance on chemical and fertilizers and pesticides. Reducing Africans' taste buds issues requires regional and also continental collaboration, and we need to develop policies which can develop and implement these systems that I'm talking about. African nations might benefit from fostering innovation in the production of food that grows readily and naturally in their own nations, in contrast to the long-standing, consistently failed attempts to expand large-scale large-scale agricultural productions. There is a need for Africans to growing a number of food, and also young Africans have to realize their own potential, in the sense that the essential human survival tactics is to keep our own farming, our own animals, pigs, and also our own fishes, and also goats, that can hopefully cultivate food systems to broaden. And also the submission here is not the perpetual subjugation of the African to a narrow blended diet of cassava, ugari, gari, yami, or millet. But neither is it a demand for a return to antiquated farming practices or labor-intensive agriculture. Rather, this piece calls for a building of innovation around Africa's indigenous foods and farming practices, the kind of innovation that places Ubuntu, not profit, first, while dignifying the land and the earth of Africa. Thank you.
2, 1, and...
October cleanup campaign!
You're seated, you're eating a banana. Next thing you see someone going like, 1 meter syndrome. I want this to be away from me, but it's supposed to be 1 meter away, because the 1 meter is from about this 1 meter syndrome. So if we stop that, this environment will be kept clean.
But it might take 3 and behind.
Chocolate and caramel, ooh-wee. The sun kissed you and said, ooh-wee. Even the money said, ooh-wee.
We're here at the Africa University Cleanup Campaign. Everything's amazing, it's beautiful. We're having this place almost as clean as your minds, because at this Christian institution, we're dedicated to purity, focus, and integrity. Ubuntu, you are because I am.